We just got our hands on the undocumented changes that were included in last week's 6.3.0 update. You know, the ones that Arrowhead said there was just too many of them to list out in the notes. Well, there are 48 of them, 2 of which are related to our Helldivers armor and equipment. The rest, well, you do the math. Here it all comes, and if you would be so kind as to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell as we dive into everything we didn't know about Helldivers last update. Well, we just got the updated undocumented changes from update 6.3.0, and remember back when Arrowhead said that there were too many changes to list? Well, they were right. In total, and I may be wrong here, but I counted 48 enemies or stratagems receiving unlisted changes. And before I hop into this, I wanted to say a huge thanks to the data mining community who have put in the overtime to get this info over to the group at the Helldivers Wiki. Anyways, here we go. I've done my best to not only include the text of the changes so you can see it up on screen, but also the items that are affected. And of course, these first 2 we knew about days ago, and they have to do with our Helldiver stratagems. First up is the 𝗵𝐻 Breakthrough Exosuit. The shield armor was increased from medium, which is AP3, up to AP4. And it also says briefly opening and closing the minimap no longer cancels reload. Next up is the EGL-21 Grenadier Battlement. The ballistic cover armor, that's the shielding in front of it, was also increased from AP3 up to AP4. Okay, with those 2 out of the way, it's now time to touch on all the rest of them. So buckle up, here we go. Let's start off with the automatons, the Vox engines. Torso health was reduced from 21 grand down to 9,000, as well as the undercarriage health being reduced from 11,000 to 9,000. Now, they picked up armor pen on all their weapons. The big main arm cannons that they have, the explosion armor pen was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Their missile pods, where they spam out the missiles, the explosion armor pen was increased from AP4 up to AP5. And the little miniguns that they have on their chassis, direct angle armor pen was increased from AP2 up to AP3. Next up are the factory striders, the fusion repeater cannon. That's the giant cannon on its back. Large angle armor pen was increased from AP4 up to AP5. Also, its explosive armor pen was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Next up are the Annihilator tanks. 2 changes here. One is to the Fusion Battle Cannon. That's its main turret cannon. Large angle armor pen increased from AP4 up to AP5. Also, its explosive armor pen was increased from AP3 up to AP4. And then it also has the Coax Fusion Cycler. I believe that's the small gun attached to the turret. That was moved from AP2 up to AP3. For the Shredder tank, you know, that's a tank with the 4 turrets that fires hella fast. Well, yeah, it's quad heavy fusion cyclers. Direct angle armor pen increased from AP3 up to AP4. WARSTRIDERS, everyone's favorite. The fusion culverins, those are its main guns on both of its arms. Direct angle armor pen increased from AP4 up to AP5. Next over to some smaller foot soldier units, and these aren't actually small, but you get the idea. The Hulk Bruiser and the Jet Brigade Hulk Bruiser. Its fusion autocannons. Direct angle armor pen increased from AP3 up to AP4, and its rotary munition launcher explosive armor pen increased from AP3 to AP4. For the Hulk Obliterator, its rotary munition launcher, that's the missile launcher or rocket launcher on one of its arms. The explosive armor pen was increased from AP3 to AP4. Next up, Hulk Scorchers, Jet Brigade Hulk Scorchers, and Pyro Troopers. The Flamer, that's its flame arm, direct, slight, and large angle armor pen increased from AP3 to AP4. How about the things in the sky? Well, yeah, the Gunships. Heavy Fusion Cycler direct angle armor pen increased from AP3 to AP4, and its heat rocket racks, those are the rockets it spams down at you, explosive armor pen increased from AP3 up to AP4. Next up are a couple changes to the Cyborgs, starting off with the Agitators. First off, their Plasma Charger angled armor pin was increased on 2 different levels here. Direct and slight armor angle pin was increased from AP2 up to AP3, so that's light to medium, and its large angle armor pin was increased from AP1, which is unarmored, up to AP2. Plasma Charger Overcharge, slight angle armor pin increased from AP3 to AP4. Plasma Charger Overcharge explosive armor pin was also increased from AP3 to AP4. And its HE grenades explosive armor pin was increased from AP3 up to AP4. For any of you that have been hitting the Cyborgs, maybe you noticed a change to the Agitators. That's probably why. They were buffed pretty much across the board. Next up, keeping with the Cyborgs, are the Radicals. Their Plasma Scatter Guns, slight angle armor pin increased from AP2 up to AP3. Back over to the automatons, and we're with the Rocket Devastators, our good old buddies. Listen to this one. Rocket pod arrays. Those are the rockets they fire off the pods above both their shoulders. Explosive armor pin increased from AP3 to AP4. Everyone's favorite enemy, the Incendiary Machine Gun Devastators. Those are the Conflagration Devs. Their Fusion Conflagrator Angled Armor Pin, that's their main weapon. Direct and slight angle armor pin was increased from AP2 up to AP3, and the large angle armor pin was increased from AP1 up to AP2. Also, the shield they carry is now destructible and dropped when destroyed. The patch notes say this change was intended to be applied in update 1.006.202. So now that shield they carry is now AP4. Its health has 800 HP, and it's 0.7 or 70% durable. The Conflagration Devastators, so that's the Ensign Corps version of the Devastators. Their scatter guns, they picked up direct, slight, and large angle armor pin was increased from AP2 up to AP3. How about Scout Striders and Reinforced Scout Striders? Their Heavy Fusion Repeater, that's the laser cannon they have on their chin. Direct angle armor pin was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Incendiary Rocket Raiders. This is the Ensign Corps version of the Rocket Raiders. Their Portable Fusion Cannon, projectile direct angle armor pin increased from AP4 up to AP5. Wow, those things are everywhere. Rocket Raiders, again, these are everywhere. Their portable launcher, the explosive armor pin, was increased from AP3 up to AP4. And you're going to see this a lot, their grenades. The explosive armor pin was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Speaking of grenades, listen to this list. Brawlers, Commissars, Jet Brigade Commissars, Marauders, Assault Raiders, MG Raiders, Jet Brigade MG Raiders, Troopers, Jet Brigade Troopers, basically anything that's really small with 2 legs that runs around in a bot mission. Their grenades, explosive armor pin was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Now over to some bot emplacements. First off, the mortar emplacement. Its projectile standard damage was increased from 0 to 20. Projectile durable damage was increased from 0 to 2. All projectile angled armor pin decreased from 4 down to 0. And explosion armor pin was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Now over to the turrets, the bunker turrets. Yikes. Direct angle armor pin increased from AP4 up to AP5. The command bunker says it had its fusion casemate. I believe those are the lasers it shoots. Direct angle armor pin increased from AP3 to AP4. And the automaton machine gun emplacement. Man, those things tend to cut me down so quick. Heavy fusion repeater. Direct angle armor pin increased from AP3 up to AP4. Now we're switching gears and heading over into Squidsville. Here are the Illuminate changes. First off are the Gatekeepers. Their volley projectile angled armor pin was increased on 2 different levels. Direct angle armor pin was buffed from AP4 up to AP5. A slight and large angle armor pin increased from AP3 up to AP4. Their volley explosion armor pin was also buffed from AP3 to AP4, and their charged shot explosion armor pin was buffed from AP3 to AP4. Seeing a trend here? Stingrays. I haven't seen one of those in a while. It's Plasma Destructor Gun Pods. Those are the things that shoots at you. Slight angle armor pen value increased from AP3 to AP4. Overseers. Projectile Direct Angle Armor Pen buffed from AP4 to AP5. Wow. Projectile Slight and Large Angle Armor Pen was also buffed from AP3 to AP4. Elevated Overseers, their Plasma Storm Rifles, Slight Angle Armor Pen increased from AP3 to AP4. Crescent Overseers, those are the guys that hang out in the back and lob in those plasma bombs on the huge arcs. Their Plasma Bombardment Armor Pen is buffed on 2 different levels. First off, the Projectile Slight and Large Angle Armor Pen increased from AP3 to AP4, and their Explosion Armor Pen was increased from AP3 to AP4. Obtruders. What? Wow, okay. Obtruders. Projectile Slight Angle Armor Pen was buffed from AP3 to AP4, and the Projectile Extreme Angle Armor Pen was decreased from AP3 down to AP0. Well, that's something. Watchers. Wow, they're in here too. Projectile Angled Armor Pen was increased on 3 different levels. Direct Angle Armor Pen increased from AP3 to AP4. Slight Angle Armor Pen increased from AP2 to AP3. And Large Angle Armor Pen was increased from AP1, which is unarmored, up to AP2. Even the Illuminate Lightning Spires picked up damage here. Those are the Tesla towers they use. Tesla Displacer, Direct, Slight, and Large Angle Armor Pen was increased from AP3 up to AP4. Wow. And finally, it looks like there's 3 changes to the Terminids, starting off with the Hive Lord. It's Bile Rain. Direct, Slight, and Large Angle Armor Pen increased from AP4 up to AP5. So that's the spew. It shoots out all over the place and absolutely wrecks your armor. Dragon Roaches, Fire Breath. Direct, Slight, and Large Angle Armor Pen increased from AP3 to AP4. And the Bile Titans, just the Bile Titans, not the Spore Burst Bile Titans, just the regular Bile Titans Bile Spew. Direct, Slight, and Large Angle Armor Pen was also increased from AP3 up to AP4. I was concerned when I didn't see the changes listed out by Arrowhead as part of the patch notes, and this is a lot. I mean, there's no way around it. That's a lot of changes that were undocumented. Were they left out of the official patch notes because there were so many changes and buffs made to enemy units? You know, I don't know. But after hearing all of those changes, what is your initial gut feeling about everything? Were they overkill or just right? Drop a comment with your thoughts. Now that we've been through that list of undocumented changes, I wanted to weigh in with my thoughts and feedback concerning the way this patch feels, and more importantly, how the game is generating the moment-to-moment chaos and combat we all love. So first up are the mechs, and I've now used all of them except for the breakthrough on all 3 factions, and I've not gotten into the exact science, of the maths behind what they can and cannot tank, but based on how they feel to operate, I'd say they are mostly back to where they were before all of the durable damage changes hit the game, which was a week before we started our invasion of Cyberstan. That terrible dev design choice they installed of the insta-kill weak points on the legs is gone, and more often than not, I'm running out of ammo in both of my arms before I outright lose the mech. That said though, from what I'm seeing with the Flame Sentry and the Lumber or Crisper left arm, those are still not dialed in. Either there's an issue with the direct damage not being where it needs to be, or the dead zone circumference is just too big. But I've seen Illuminate Voteless come charging up to both of these flamers and not catch on fire. In fact, many times it is the residual ground fire and ticks that are burning down targets and not the direct damage. So that needs to be looked at. Mechs and tanks getting targeted from insane range, especially when Pelican 1 is bringing them planetside, is still in the game, and I know it's kind of a hot topic. Some of you like it, while others don't, but for me, waiting 7 to 8 minutes to call in a mech, only to see it hit the planet either already gimped or completely wiped out, at least in my opinion, that needs to be greatly toned back or just completely taken out of the game. We saw this introduced with the Cyberstan campaign, and it gets especially bad on bot planets. Sentries are, yes, now more durable, but there are still too many instances where a turret lets a single enemy target just wander right up to it and start tearing it to pieces without ever firing a shot. There's also a noticeable lack of buffs to emplacements and the Gator oil drilling rig, making that mission type just scuffed before it ever begins. Those both sound like pretty easy slider changes, and I don't know why it's taking the studio so long to make those adjustments. The undocumented charger butt-down rotations felt like another slap in the face from Arrowhead because, this is a long time ago, but at first we had the leg meta, so the devs took that away. Then there was the extremely niche overpinned melee weapon strategy that they also patched out, and then more currently we had the shoot them in the glowing weak point tail in the air mechanic, and now that's been taken away, all in the name of what the studio wants, which is for you to bring a launcher and to blow the chargers' heads off. I'd like to challenge Arrowhead to listen to their own words when they applauded player agency and finding new and exciting ways to deal with enemies in the game instead of pushing singular metas and studio expectations. And finally, we have all the other adjustments, like to nade amounts, orbital damage patterns, and everything else packed into Update 6.3.0. But, the items I thought might be a problem, like delayed reloads, staggered stemming, and not breaking sprint when encountering vegetation, have all three proven to be solid changes. Which brings us to the gameplay itself, and I could probably make an entire video on just this topic alone, but when I say that it is lacking, I'm not saying that Helldivers sucks, far from it, but what I'm saying is that for some reason the spawns, even on difficulty 10, are way too thin. If you happen to watch some of this recorded footage from the Custom Galactic War, it spotlights what non-stop combat can be like in HD2, and it's the bonkers, chaotic combat that attracted so many players to this game. Because, it's visceral, and Helldivers has a way of delivering that combat that makes it addictive. But the way the game is right now, it's just so tamed back. On difficulty 10, and especially in a full squad, we should be shooting our weapons, tossing nades, and calling in strats while knocking out a mission objective. We should be doing the same at a secondary POI, and as we move between those two, we should also be in non-stop combat. But fellas, I've got to mention this. On the new patch and up against all the different factions, there were multiple occasions where either I or someone in the squad was asking, where are the enemies? I don't know why Arrowhead has dialed these back so damn much, because the CGW is using the exact same servers as Arrowhead, and their spawns are intense, in stark contrast to what we're seeing in the game right now when run by Arrowhead. I've heard that the CGW team have reduced the weight and points values for many of the enemies so that they can spawn in more before hitting the max caps, and for them, it seems to be working, but man, I really think Arrowhead is missing the boat here in terms of laying in extra hard to what makes their horde shooter so damn awesome: combat. And finally, those undocumented enemy buffs. To basically up most of the Helldivers armor, excluding emplacements, and tell us about those in the patch notes, but then to also simultaneously up pretty much every automaton unit's armor pen and explosive armor pen values, and to not tell us about those, listen man, I'm just going to call it the way I see it. That was dirty. To see the mech arms move up to medium armor pen was a pretty positive move, but now we see that the bots have maintained their armor pen advantage across the board, as pretty much all of their units were buffed up by a level on the armor pen as well. The optics of this situation don't look good, and I don't know why Arrowhead continues to do this, but it's like they can't help themselves. Call it monkey paw, call it whatever, but if this is what the studio calls being more transparent, then we're in trouble. But, that's just my thoughts on it all, and here's where I turn to you, my viewers, for your thoughts and feedback. Now, we know that Arrowhead reads your comments because they've said as much in the past, so give them some feedback. Do you think the patch was good? Maybe not so much? And how about the spawns and pretty much everything else? All I ask is that if you do comment, just keep it civil, and you know what I mean. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alerts. If you're on mobile, you can always help promote the video by swiping to hype. And before I call it on this one, I cannot thank these awesome hardcore channel members enough. For without their support, content like this would not be possible. Until the next one, this is 𝗲𝗲𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗲𝗿𝘀 signing off.